Have you heard about Global Poker? Global Poker is the fastest growing card room in the US today, and it's available online at globalpoker.com. Global Poker is a social poker site that offers safe and secure cash out options by using their unique and patented sweepstakes model. Players can compete in big guaranteed tournaments, jackpot sit and goes, or cash games featuring Hold'em, Omaha, and even Crazy Pineapple. Don't wait. Check out Global Poker today.
Poker Stories is an audio series that features casual interviews with some of the game's best players and personalities. Each episode highlights a well-known figure in the poker world and dives deep into their favorite tales both on and off the feld.
Hello and welcome to Poker Stories, a podcast brought to you by Card Player, the Poker Authority, and hosted by me, Julio Rodriguez. This is episode number 91, and it features two-time World Series of Poker bracelet winner and daily fantasy sports crusher, Jesse Martin. Jesse is now 40 years old. Happy birthday, by the way. And he is originally from Northborough, Massachusetts. He picked up poker while he was at Syracuse University and actually decided to do it for a living before Moneymaker won the main event and sparked the poker boom. In the nearly 20 years since, Jesse has continuously reinvented himself as a poker pro, starting with limit hold'em cash games and then moving online where he did it under the name MazeOrBowie. After picking up mixed games, Jesse spent his time moving back and forth between high-stakes cash games and the tournament circuit, where he has won more than $3.2 million. He has several final table finishes at the WSOP, including a third-place showing in the 50K Poker Players Championship for almost $600,000. He also has two bracelets, having won the 2013 $10,000 No-Limit Deuce event and the 2017 $2,500 mixed triple draw event. After his son was born, Jesse started concentrating more on daily fantasy sports so that he could be at home. In December, he turned a $600 qualifier into $2 million when he won the DraftKings Fantasy Football World Championship in Miami. Anyway, that's enough intro. Here's my conversation with Jesse Martin. I am here with the one and only Jesse Martin. Jesse, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well today. I'm doing fine.
Yeah, moods up, spirits are high.
Yeah, I mean, some low spirits, I guess, based on the current environment, but overall, doing really well through everything.
Well, we are recording this the week that most people would be getting into town here in Las Vegas, where I am.
For sure.
For the World Series of Poker. I mean, I know you're not exactly specifically a poker pro these days, or exclusively, I should say. But I'm assuming the World Series is something you look forward to every year.
It is definitely. I mean, World Series is definitely something I look forward to every year, or have for the last 15 years. Now that I have a 3-year-old son, I actually have started looking forward to it less because it means a lot of time apart from him.
Mm-hmm.
So that is I guess one positive from not having the World Series of Poker this year, that I don't have to go through that. Kind of limbo where I do love playing the World Series of Poker and playing all the events, but I also don't love being away from my family, or obviously, they do visit when I go, but they don't come out with me. So it is kind of, especially last year, it became a tough time for me. So it's interesting not to have it, and I guess we'll see how it feels.
Well, where is home these days? Is it Miami, Boston, LA?
At Los Angeles, right outside of LA. Just kind of have like a little land right outside of LA, and still can go play in the LA casinos, or was playing in the LA casinos when they were running. And yeah, so I'm a West Coaster. I grew up in Massachusetts and went to school in New York and lived in New York City for a while. But at this point, I've been out in LA for 9 years and no real plan to leave anytime soon. So
Well, let's go back to Massachusetts. Is it Northborough?
Mm-hmm.
Is there an accent on that that I'm
No,
missing?
no, Northborough. That's it.
I read you played soccer growing up. What else was little Jesse getting into?
Soccer, basketball, tennis were it was definitely the top three. Yeah, I just played a ton of sports, and yeah, that was basically what my life revolved around. At least until maybe a little recreational marijuana when I became a junior or senior in high school. But yeah, just a ton of sports and playing with friends. They're pretty normal suburban lifestyle, middle class suburban growing up.
I know you didn't find poker until college. What was the plan? What did you want to do?
That's a great question. I had a major in college that it was information system technology,
Okay.
um, and I really wasn't that great at it. It
Trying
wasn't.
to let's frame this. 98, 99?
Yeah, I mean, I graduated in 2002, so yeah, I started in 98, 99. Yeah, so one of the problems with a major like that is that everything's going to be obsolete by the time you're in the workforce, anyways. But
Exactly.
it was a new major. Actually, the year I got there was a new major at Syracuse, and it combined business and computers, and it actually is a great program. And I have friends from the program who've done great things since. And but I was kind of coasting by and getting okay grades, and really my plan was just to get a degree and move to a major city and figure it out. That really was my plan before poker, which is maybe one of the reasons it was so easy for me to fall into poker, because I didn't really have a plan. I figured I'd figure something out at some point, but I wasn't one of those people who was, studying to be a doctor or a sports reporter. I was just kind of going to get my degree and enter the workforce.
Because that's what you do, right? It's just one of those things.
It's what a lot of people do for sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
some people are more focused or more, or have a path in college, but a lot of people definitely don't.
So walk me through how poker got introduced to you. Did you play it
Uh,
all as a kid?
I played. I played in camp. I played some form of poker in camp. I was always intrigued by gambling, but certainly didn't play much. I do remember like watching, like maybe when Chris Ferguson won, or so, just watching the World Series of Poker on ESPN with no hole cards and being intrigued by it, but certainly nothing big. And then really just rounders coming out, and a very similar story. Rounders coming out, and one of my best friends from college, Sonny, his group of friends were like Rounders obsessed, and he's like, or I guess his fraternity brothers were Rounders obsessed, and he brought me along to a game one night, and I remember getting heads up and losing heads up, and it was terrible, obviously, but just pretty much was hooked from then. Just the camaraderie of the game, and meeting some new friends, and
So you
it just
were finding, because Rounders came out in '98. So you were into poker before the boom.
I was definitely into poker. I mean, I was a professional poker player before Moneymaker, for sure. Yeah, yeah. I graduated in 2002. Yeah, I was playing at Turning Stone. I went to Syracuse, so I was playing. I was going once or twice a week to Turning Stone my senior year of college. The Rounders thing for me was more, I think, 2000, 2001. It wasn't right when it came out, but it was, I guess, when on
Well, I don't.
video.
Yeah, I don't think anybody saw it in theaters.
Yeah, I guess not. Yeah, and then yeah, just went to the Carousel Mall and bought whatever poker book looked good on the shelf at Barnes and Nobles, and I for whatever reason bought some good Skolansky books right away, and that was enough to beat the local 10-20 limit hold'em game. I was beating it right away, just like, wow, this is easy. I just follow what this book says that I've read 20 times, and I can make $20 an hour at the casino on my day off.
Right, right. Because I'm assuming being in the Northeast and before, the No Limit Hold'em boom, you were playing stud and limit Hold'em a lot.
Exclusively limit hold'em. I just played tons of limit hold'em. Although the limit hold'em game, by the time I graduated college, the game that I was playing in pretty much died out and had turned into a 5-10 no limit game. And I started playing that also, and didn't really totally know how to transition to no limit hold'em. Didn't have a no limit hold'em book, but basically just the same tight hand selection. And at that point, had just thought about poker in general a lot. I was kind of holding my own in the no limit game too, although certainly didn't feel as comfortable in it.
So there wasn't like online poker, at least not like it was a few years later.
Right after I graduated, I had moved to Boston and still without a job. Really just kind of had a little bit of a bankroll built up. And I was living in Boston, going to Red Sox games and going to Foxwoods when the Red Sox were on the road. But when I was at home in Boston, I did have a Paradise Poker account set up, and I was playing 5-10 limit hold'em on Paradise Poker. Not really with, I think I maybe won or broke even, but it wasn't, I didn't feel like it was like some great money making opportunity compared to driving to Foxwoods and playing 15-30 limit hold'em at the time.
Now, were you doing, just well enough to keep your head above water, pay the bills, or was this a situation where the bankroll's growing and you're looking at that degree wondering if you're ever going to use it?
Well, like you said, it was before the boom, so it was harder for me to picture a career of professional poker, but it was easy for me to picture, I was keeping good notes, and I was beating the 15-30 game to what I calculated to be like $35 an hour, and I could feel that I had an edge. So, so it wasn't like I could just tell I was playing better poker than these people. And, so $35 an hour, maybe there's also a 20-40 game that ran at Mohegan Sun sometimes. So I kind of just calculated that if I played a bunch, I could make 60,000-70,000 a year. And on my off time, I could go to Red Sox games and fish concerts. And, that was kind of what my current plan was, but certainly wasn't thinking that I would be a professional. Well, I guess I don't totally remember, but I don't think I was thinking that I would be a lifetime professional poker player or a professional gambler. I just, at the time, it was a pretty cool way to put some money in my pocket and have freedom.
But you must have known of professional poker players or heard about them, or
for sure, yeah.
Were you looking up to anybody, those guys in Vegas at all, or no aspirations of playing, in Bobby's room one day?
Not right away, but eventually, yeah. All that stuff came pretty quickly. As far as aspirations and looking up, at the time, I was just looking up. I mean, I remember their names, or one guy was Billy Whitney. He was the easily the best 15-30 limit hold'em player at Foxwoods, and I kind of became somewhat friendly with him and just kind of watched how he approached poker and being a professional. He had a wife and kids and in a house in Connecticut, and he was a very talented player and smart guy. And so I observed him and how he conducted himself, and how he treated it like a job. And then there was another guy, I forget his last name, but a guy named Pat at the Mohegan Sun, and I observed him. And so there were some guys who were, you can be a professional 15-30, 20-40 limit hold'em player and make, like I said, 60 to 100,000 a year and support a family. So I don't know if those are aspirations, but I did see how it was done. But I don't think at the time that I thought that, one day I would be playing the 50K, Players Championship. Mm-hmm. I don't think, it wasn't, Nick Schulman, for example, I think right away, he's just like, I want to, this is like my calling. I want to be the best in the world. This is it for me. And I'm not sure if it hit me the exact same way.
Well, I'm just going to bring up something I had planned for later, because it brings up an interesting idea. There was a debate on Twitter recently of who are the top 10 most talented poker players. And you saw a difference between talented and hardworking. And I'm wondering how you identify a player in each category and what category you put yourself in.
Right. Okay. Somewhat of a tough one. So talent to me is it's more like a field play. I guess I equate talent to like someone who's a field player who really just has a feel for the flow of the game and just can kind of make reads and plays based off talent. I guess I have a hard way to use a different word
The Brady Pennies of the world.
Yeah, I think so. Instead of someone who is really more of a calculated player who really has studied the game and is making a play because even before solvers, making a play because they've studied this spot and they've sat in their office and really
Dominic Nietzsche.
but even a pre-solver, type of thing where like they beat the game because they have the best hand selection and stuff like that. So someone like Greg Mueller, I think actually just kind of came to mind that he I don't think he really got brought up that much, but whenever I play with Greg, I can feel his talent, while I'm playing with him. It's just something that's there. It's like this guy knows. He was born. I guess he was born for hockey. I was going to say he was born for poker, but part of his being is poker. He's just very comfortable and talented. So,
Greg was on this podcast, and I got the sense that he basically treated poker tournaments not that dissimilar from hockey tournaments. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's a sport to him, more than anything. And sometimes, that mentality can get you pretty far.
Yeah, but he just has a feel. I guess and Doyle kind of described it that, I saw Doyle describe on Twitter that, he views talent as, you create, you invent a new poker game and whoever can, is the best at it. And I don't, not to question the great Doyle Brunson, but I don't totally look at it the same way because, a poker theorist, I would think, would be, one of the best people to tackle a new game because they understand how to break down the game theory of a new game. And I would think more like the guy who maybe when you invent that new game, can kind of tell if you're, can kind of tell if you're bluffing on the turn by day two based on it just has more of a feel for the game than someone who's maybe more theory.
I wonder if that's just a product of the times, though, because back in Doyle's day, when a new game was popping up, it did kind of take talent to be able to translate one skill from a game to the new one where you may not know the same odds and percentages.
But back then,
he may call that talent, even though it's just math skill. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, I would say 10 years ago, probably that would be pretty, or 20 years ago, I think maybe the way he looks at it would be the exact way to look at it, and maybe even how I looked at it. And now I just think that anyone who has the best theory base can kind of go from game to game and use game theory or use GTO thinking to apply it to a new game, and they can do it quickly. And that's why these great players, whether they're talented or theory-based, can play these 20-game big bet mixes, with different rules, because really it's all poker, and they're just adjusting their poker theory to different games, and work off the table is going to help them, mostly with hand selection and stuff like that. But the theory of big bet poker is kind of universal from game to game.
Well, now here comes the question: where do you put yourself? You're obviously one of the top tier poker players out there. Are you talented or are you a hard worker?
Right. Well, first of all, I myself today compared to myself even 3 or 4 years ago when I was just totally engulfed in poker, before I had a son, before I was married, is different. So, obviously my talent is the same. And I think I am certainly, the thing is, anyone like me who's spent, 15 years as a successful professional poker player clearly has poker talent. But I have never put myself, as far as talent, in the same group as, someone like Greg, someone like Nick Schulman, maybe someone like, David Oppenheim, that group, I never put myself in. I put myself in, the tier below them as far as talent. So I think when I was, playing in some of the biggest games and doing well at the highest level, I think, my work ethic at the time and how much I was dedicated to learning the new games and doing, reaching out to, different people, the best players in different games and trying to learn from them, I think, really brought me a long way, and really, gave me an edge, or added to my edge in a way that maybe, my top of the tier world class talent would bring me. But
Right.
but I do think anyone who's gonna play in the biggest games and have an edge certainly is going to be a talented poker player.
Well, let's get back to the rise up the rankings for you there. When did you feel like, okay, this is my career, or was there a big turning point or score? I mean, I know you had a big scoop main event final table for like 400K, and there was a win at Bellagio.
Yeah, those were both big moments. I would say when I thought to myself, wow, this might be something I'm going to be doing for the next 30 years instead of kind of taking it, year by year.
Yeah.
Was just the advent of online poker, or the explosion of online poker. So I moved to San Diego in 2004 and was playing 4 tables of 15-30 on Party Poker. And at that time, you could really make a lot of money. And once you kind of add up the money, you're like, wow, if poker's huge right now, it's only going to get bigger. This is something that I'm probably going to end up doing until I, until I can, stop making, multiple 6-figure years, back to back to back. And it seemed like that wasn't going to end anytime soon. And I even moved to New York City after 1 year in San Diego. A lot of my best friends were in New York City, and I loved, I had kind of started to fall in love with New York City, and I moved there, with no plan of taking a job, just to live in an apartment and play online poker. And I was very confident that I would be able to do that and make good money, and I was able to do that for I lived there for 6 years. So I guess, probably the decision to move to New York City and, be an online poker player was probably when I was really taking it seriously, I would say, or really realized that this was the path.
I think our listeners might remember your screen name, MazeOrBowie.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, fish reference, or is that Grateful
Dead?
Yeah,
it's Fish. Yeah, it's a reference to the band Fish. Yeah.
Yeah, but obviously, you're moving along there. You're doing well online, big scores there. You had that win at Bellagio for $250,000 in 2007. Was mixed always a part of it, or did you pick up those games along the way?
Yeah, mixed really wasn't a part of it. It's I don't really have any regrets at this point, but I would say at some point I did have the regret that wow, like I always had thought to myself, I need to learn mixed games. Like I need to learn mixed games. It would really help me. But I guess at the time, I was playing mostly No-Limit Hold'em at that time, and I was doing well, and I guess I wasn't really needing extra action, so I just never learned it. And I was always a little scared to learn it, as far as like I thought the learning curve was really big, and I'm not sure why I never realized that I really could just sit down and learn it and work hard at it, like
right, especially with your limit hold'em background.
For sure, and I just never really learned it until I guess I think the story, and I've told it before. Something like 2009, 2010. I was doing well. I was playing pretty big limit hold'em on full tilt and doing fine. And one of the a losing player from our limit hold'em game. At that time you could search what table they were at, and he was at my limit hold'em game and abruptly left. And I saw he was sitting in a horse game, 300, 600 horse with Eli Alezra and I think Hassan Habib and whoever else. and I had a bunch of money in my account, and I said, well, I guess, and, obviously I knew the rules, and I had watched, and I maybe messed around a little bit with it, but really was very new to all the games as far as like advanced strategy. But I just hopped in, and I think I won $50,000 in that one session.
Wow, 300, 600. Wow.
Yeah, maybe 400,
first
800.
session.
Yeah, it was crazy. The guy was exceptionally loose player. So, really all it was kind of bingo. Just if you can, make a hand or two, you're gonna win some big pots. And so just ran good with that, and then kind of used that as the discretionary bankroll to play to play bigger mixed games, and finally started just learn, buying the books. And I probably already had the books, honestly, on my bookshelf collecting dust. The Raise Z Stud 8 or Better book.
Yeah. Split pot book, yeah.
Split pot book, and the Mason Malmuth or Sklansky, 7-card stud high book, and the Sklansky Raz book, and just read all those. And later I've kind of realized that all these books had a lot of holes in them, but at the time they were enough to beat soft games, combined with talking to friends about strategy, and just kind of learned from there, and then started playing the 100, 200 to 400, 800 mixed games on stars. And I was never an elite mixed game player back at that time. I was only a tight, decent mixed game player who could beat a soft game. And it took me a while to probably, until I moved out to Los Angeles and really started playing live mixed games exclusively, instead of, really not playing much Hold'em at all, to really transition to where I thought I was, one of the better players, instead of just a tight player who could win in a soft game.
You started playing the 10K mixed events at the series, and got your first bracelet in 2013.
Yep.
in Deuce. How'd that feel? Was that like a bucket list thing for you?
It was, I think. Yeah, it was at the time. It certainly was. It was pretty emotional. If you Google the video, I definitely shed like a tear or two. I try to hold it back, but it was pretty huge for me. And even then, it was No-Limit Deuce-To-Seven, and I wasn't really playing that. That game still had not become as popular as it is now. So people weren't really putting it in the mixes. So I was playing mixed games a lot back then, but it really wasn't showing up in the mix all that much. So I was playing a lot of regular Deuce-To-Seven triple draw, but not much No-Limit single draw. So it felt really good. I texted that whole tournament with my buddy Brian Tate, who's a great poker player and knew the game better than me, and I was just sending him hands.
You're talking about breakfast mogul Brian Tate?
Yes, breakfast mogul Brian Tate, exactly. Yeah, overnight oats. One thing that's great about the World Series of Poker is that I feel like I've done a lot of my mixed game learning at the World Series of Poker, because what happens is you sign up for a tournament, and say it's Omaha 8 or better, and you played Omaha 8 or better, but maybe you don't play it all that much. But if you can run good early and build up a stack, all of a sudden you're playing intense Omaha 8 or better for 2 or 3 days, thinking only about Omaha 8 or better, texting, if you're lucky enough to have, someone like Mark Gregorich or Oasis or something like that in your phone, say, hey, do you mind looking at this hand? And that you're just thinking so much about these specific games when you enter these specialty tournaments, that you really can improve a lot. And I feel like I improved a ton at No-Limit Deuce-To-Seven during that tournament. From day 1 to day 3, I was a different player. And then all of a sudden it became a strength of mine, instead of a game that I didn't really know all that well, besides the basic theory.
That's funny. I remember that tournament specifically. I interviewed David Baker, like late on day 1, and he was describing some strategy to me, and I was like, oh, I have no idea how to play this game at all. Like, the stuff he was talking about was just so beyond, and I'm ahead of its time, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And of course, you went on to beat him heads up.
Yeah, and he was kind of like you said, he was ahead of his time. I think he had won the year before, and clearly a very good player. So yeah, I was happy that that heads up was short. I just kind of picked up a hand early and I think won maybe a 60-40 against him, and all of a sudden it was over, and that was a lot better. It was a lot better result than grinding against someone who was clearly a very good player.
Your other bracelet came a few summers ago, also in low ball, triple draw.
Yeah.
Was that a little bit more comfortable for you?
Yeah, at the time, I mean, so that tournament was Deuce-To-Seven triple draw, Ace-to-5 triple draw, and Badugi. It was $2,500 buy-in, so it was a little bit of a softer field and a really good structure. That's such a great tournament. And every year, it seems like a really, I think there's only been 4 years of that tournament, and I'm pretty clearly the worst player to ever won that tournament, which is somewhat wild. But yeah, Dan Zach won it, Chris Vitch won it, and then Johannes Becker won it.
The cream rises to the top.
Yeah, and all three of those guys are, clearly top 10 in the world, theorists on, or, I don't know. I don't know about the ranking, but they might be the actual top three at those, at that exact tournament. So it's just, it was a great tournament. I felt really good the whole way. I felt like I had an edge the whole way, and obviously ran good the whole way. And it was a very satisfying tournament, and the win felt different than the first one for sure.
Let's talk about close calls. The biggest one, obviously, you finished third in the 50K Poker Players Championship for $600K.
Yeah.
We also have a runner-up in the 10K Limit Hold'em, runner-up in this 10K Stud, fifth place at the LAPC, third place in a Stud 8 or better. Which one is the most painful?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a fair question. Two stand out clearly as the most painful. Number one, the most painful would be the LAPC main event, because I was in such a groove in that tournament. I was feeling so good. And then, I still look back to the day of the final table. The way the LAPC is set up, if you're a Los Angeles resident, it's just awesome because it starts at 12 noon. It ends around 8:39. So you miss traffic both ways. You can sleep in your bed. You can get plenty of rest. And I was just loving it. Just really enjoying the commute and preparing myself. And then the day of the final table, you're doing interviews in the morning, and it's just a whole different thing, and it doesn't start till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And for whatever reason, that threw me off. And I think I went to get a haircut before, and I went to get new sunglasses, and just had this whole different mindset the morning of the final table. And then at the final table, realized that that the blinds get moved up, the levels get turboed up, which I didn't realize until the first hand was dealt, and all of a sudden you're playing 30-minute levels. So just overall, I just am frustrated with the way I prepared for that day, and don't think I did a great job of that, of preparing for that day. There's really no huge mistakes that I feel like I made, and I actually made some good plays watching it back, folded, made a tough fold and stuff like that. But I just, look back on it and think that, if I had just wish I had the whole day to do over again, because I went in 3 of 6, felt really good about everything, and ended up coming in 5th. So that was a rough one. And then I wish, obviously I wish I had won the 50K PPC. But and that would be probably the second biggest one that's painful, although it was a huge score for me at the time. I had a decent chunk of myself, but I was three-handed with pretty much we all had equal chips. And, if things went a little differently, I could have just won, and that would have been pretty amazing.
That was you and Johnny World and Brandon Shack Harris. Yeah.
Yeah.
Brandon's been on this podcast Got to get
Yeah,
Sean
actually
one of these
listened to
days.
a little bit of that this morning, and just kind of, I've listened to your podcast in the past, but just a little bit of preparation just to see what the flow
Oh.
was. So
Later on, I'm going to ask you about your time with the band Muse.
okay, yeah,
Just like
yeah,
Brandon had.
I remember that. Yeah, it's funny. I didn't hear that part this morning, but now that you say that, I do remember listening to that back in the day.
Yeah, that's an interesting story.
Yeah.
All right. We ask everybody, what did you do with the bracelets? Do they hang
Um,
somewhere? Are they
I
displayed?
I'm looking at them right now. I mean, not they weren't in my direct eye shot before you
One
said
on
that,
each
but
wrist?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I have a nice little office set up in my house, and they're just on the shelf. My son thinks that they are watches, or at least calls them watches, and one of the movies that he loves, one of the characters has this like watch that their father gave them that like they like cherish. So like he like kind of likes wearing the watch around the house and being like calling it his watch. So I usually try to give him the 2017 one because it's a little less special to me. So if he breaks it, then but the 2013 one definitely has a little more sentimental value to me. So I try to keep that one away from him a little bit more.
Oh, right. We have some rapid fire questions to close it out if you're ready.
Sure.
Let's see here. All right. All right, so you play all the games, tournaments, high stakes cash. Who's the best player in the world to you, by whatever metric you use?
Huh. That's to me. Well, I'm having a hard time.
Well, is it a cash game player? Is it a high roller?
Yeah, a million names just went through my head, but for some reason, none of them are sticking. My answer honestly is not David Oppenheim, but that his name definitely ran through my head because he plays in Bobby's room. He's been there forever, and he beats it, and he's well respected. But
You
I
would not
can't.
be the first person to say him.
Yeah, honestly, but he's not my answer. And if just because
You're like,
I don't think he is the best in the world. I think he's very good, but I think he probably has some holes. That if I could come up with I guess maybe Ike Haxton might be a good answer.
yeah, if he's even playing these days.
Yeah, just and he's probably not as good at mixed games, but he's clearly very way better at the No Limit and PLO, and is also very good at mixed games at this point too. So sure, and I really like him a lot too. So and I also like David, but I'll throw like Haxton's name out there.
Where do you side in the cash game versus tournaments debate as far as skill level? I mean, I've talked to cash game players who swear up and down that is by far the harder route to go.
Yeah, at this point, just poker in general is just so high level at the highest levels that I just really respect both, and I think that there's a ton of skill involved in both. So maybe a no limit hold'em player certainly it's easier to become a proficient no limit hold'em player than a great 10 game mixed player who can beat Bobby's room 2000 4000. But I just think you need to have so much skill and hard work to do either at this point. So it's really a hard one.
Who's the best player we've never heard of? So somebody you get to shout out who doesn't get credit that they should.
You didn't prepare me for these. Yeah, my buddy. Yeah, I never heard of is really hard one.
Well, the average poker fan may not. I'm sure I've heard of him, but
right. So like Dan Zach used to be the answer, but he kind of broke out this year.
summer.
My buddy Matt Smazik, who maybe you haven't heard of, is just kind of a LA cash game grinder, who has, he did come second to Scott Seaver in the 10K limit hold'em, I think 2 years ago, but in general really hasn't had much tournament success, mostly because he doesn't really enter them that much. But he's like kind of that classic tournament grinder who's beaten the blackjack games for years, but not that many people really know much about him. So I guess I'll use him, Matt Smazik.
Shout out to Matt. let's see here. Where was it? Oh, okay. Biggest game you've ever played in?
I played 3,000, 6,000 in Bobby's room. So I guess that's definitely the answer. I didn't have all of myself, but I had probably only had half of myself, I guess. But I was definitely playing really big. I mean, I usually like when I play, I've played 1,500, 3,000 a lot, and I never have all of myself for that. I mean, at most I'll have like, maybe I guess 70%. So yeah, so playing 3,000, 6,000 with half of myself
Yeah.
was pretty wild. The game was exceptional, and it was kind of one of those things where they're like, "Who wants to kick it up?" And I object once, and maybe get a dirty look from Gus Hansen or something, and then the second time it gets brought up, I just don't say anything, and text a friend, it's like, "Hey, you got an extra 20% here," or whatever it is.
Did you feel any different? Does it feel any different when more is on the table, or is everything just the same decision to you at this
No,
point?
it feels different for sure. Yeah, I mean, when the money, yeah, I mean, basically you want to play. It's hard, the old cliche that like if the money is meaningful to you, then you're probably playing too big. Like it should just be like bullets to you. Like while that in theory might be true, like if you stumble upon a 2,000, 4,000 game, and you have the money in your box and the players, I'm not saying this particular game the players weren't terrible, though it was a very good game, but like sometimes you're going to play above your head if the game is exceptional and you're just gambling and with an edge and you hope you win. But if you lose, it hurts. And while you're in the pot, it's impossible just to totally ignore the fact that if you lose, it's really going to hurt. But you just, as a professional gambler or just as a gambler, you try to ignore that stuff and do the best you can.
Well, you bring up an interesting point about the table. I'm wondering, what would you rather have? Would you rather have a game where it's you and maybe like 4 or 5 other top level players and one huge whale fish, or a game with like 5 or 6 B+ pros?
I've always, oh, well, that's a slightly different question than I thought you were going to ask. The answer to that is certainly the whale fish version. But yeah, I guess what I thought you were going to say is like, would you rather have a table of all really loose players, or maybe like a mix of like a bunch of loose players, but also some like tighter players to keep the balance? And I've actually like from my days of like 15, 30 limit hold'em, I've always felt that I'm pretty good, probably better than most even pros at navigating a loose game. Like I do feel
The
like
chaotic ones.
yeah, the chaotic loose games. I feel like one of my strengths is adjusting to those. So I'm always a fan of just a crazy game and trying to make the proper adjustments in the moment.
Biggest pot you've ever won or lost?
Um, well, the most I'm not sure the exact answer, but the most meaningful big pot I've ever won was I was in New York City and just playing online, and my cousin who was in New York City and kind of an amateur poker player, but serious amateur, was over, and he was just kind of watching me. And it's kind of the same story I was telling earlier, where a guy was playing, he was in a 25-15 no limit game. All of a sudden, I see him hop to a 200-400 no limit hold'em game. And at the time, I had played 0 hands of 200-400 no limit hold'em. It was after I had won that Bellagio tournament and after I've had some success. So I certainly had some money, but 200-400 no limit hold'em wasn't anything I would ever play at the time. Anyways, I jumped in, and the very first hand, I'm on the big blind. He raises the button. I 3-bet with Ace King, and he just jams in 40,000. And I call, and he has Ace Queen, and I hold and just win 40,000 on the very first hand.
So easy.
So there's an $80,000 pot. So yeah, I would say that's not the biggest hand I've ever played, but as far as like when that question is asked, that's always the hand that comes to mind.
Game selection, guys. It's
Yeah,
that
exactly.
important.
Yeah, no. If you're an aspiring poker player out there, if you want to take anything away from this conversation, game selection is really big. Although, in this current poker environment, game selection is a lot different, and how to navigate it is a lot different. So maybe that's a discussion for a different time. But yeah.
Best swap or piece you've ever had of anybody?
Well, okay, yeah. So in 2007, I had 7% of Chino Ream when he came in 7th place in the main event, and I was also
Did you collect?
I collected. Yep. Chino's all right in my book. I understand he has his faults, but he's always been okay with me. And not that he's never owed me money, he has, but more or less we're square. And yeah, that day I walked with him and the Mizrachi brothers and a couple other people who had pieces to their hotel room. He handed me all the cash on the spot. I gave him a big hug, and maybe maybe smoked a little marijuana, and safely made my way back to the Bellagio. So yeah, that was great. And then I also had, I don't remember the exact numbers, but I was more or less backing Owen Crow at the time, and he came in 15th in that same tournament. So that was that was, as far as life change, or as far as career changing poker moments for me, that's high on the list, because now I had all this extra money, and I remember just going out to LA soon after, and kind of running it up in cash games from there. So that's
crazy how the big winners of the summer, sometimes you have no idea.
Yeah, no, it is crazy. It is crazy. Yeah, for sure. It doesn't really happen to me much anymore because I'm not as into backing, but I certainly have had, I don't think Benny, for example, yeah, I certainly have had some real luck in backing at times. Like, I don't think Benny Glazer would be upset if I mentioned that I had a big piece of him, the year that he broke, or not a big piece. I had a nice piece of him the year that he broke out. So that was, just stuff like that is just so fortunate. You have the right friend that is talented, and invest in them in the right time, and it's just it can really help a summer for sure.
Omaha specialist Benny Glazer.
Yep.
Weirdest place you've ever played poker for money?
Well, I played poker. These questions are hard because I've been around for so long that a lot of different things pop in my mind. But I went when I was first getting into poker. My father was going to Austria, the country of Austria, for a barbershop quartet convention. My father is an amateur singer, musician. So
is he a baritone?
He's a tenor, I think. Yeah, exactly.
That's alto, I think.
No, he's the highest one, the highest of the four, whatever that. I think it's a tenor. So I went to Austria with him, just him and I. I must have been, I was out of college at the time. It was just a trip. He's like, hey, come to Austria with me. I have, your mom can't go, doesn't want to go, and I have a free second, +1. So I went, and it didn't really have that much to do, especially when he was doing the barbershop quartet stuff. I was alone in Austria, so I used the internet to find, which was a little harder at the time, to find a poker club, and I played. This is actually the first time I played 7-card stud. I played $1, $3, 7-card stud all night. Multiple nights. And so I don't know how weird that is, but it's just memorable. As like, wow, thinking back to now my long poker career, it's kind of funny that at one point in 2003 I was playing 1-3 7-card stud limit in Austria.
Well, now you know why people are lining up in Florida to play.
Yeah.
You got to have that poker.
I guess so, yeah.
Even stud in Austria. I mean, you could have gone to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Museum.
No, you're right. No, it's a great point. I mean, just my thirst for poker at that time was so big. It really is a good point, because now I would never think to be in Austria by myself and go play poker multiple nights in a row. But at the time, I couldn't think of anything better. And it was a great cultural experience. You're sitting there, they're all, they're speaking different languages, and, you're kind of, getting a taste of the culture in that way, which is pretty unique to poker in some ways.
Yeah. That's not the touristy stuff. You're seeing the real deal.
Exactly. Yeah.
Uh,
The
what
country.
was the worst job you had before poker?
Brugger's Bagels. Yeah, I worked at Brugger's Bagels one summer. I guess it was at college. And it was a bad job in general as far as not enjoying it. But part of what made it bad was I just wasn't that good at it. So it was just, a little, I'm just not I'm not great in the kitchen. There's
Oh,
really
what did they have you doing? Cleaning or cooking or?
No, I was at the front making sandwiches for people. But yeah, I guess it was tough. I guess it was you would have different responsibilities. Maybe if a box came in from a truck in the back, maybe it's your turn to stock it in the freezer, or yeah, some cleaning. But I would say the majority of it was just making, just taking orders from customers, and yeah, I had no problem like interacting with the customers and stuff, but I just wasn't great at any of it. You follow a protocol, but I mean, I certainly didn't excel at any of it. And I think one week I came in and the schedule was up and my hours were like way reduced. So, and I just remember just quitting the next day, just being like, okay, I'm not really enjoying this anyways, and you guys clearly don't love me as an employee anyways. So let's move on.
Let's talk sports. You mentioned that you follow the Red Sox, and obviously you're a bit of a sports gambler. When
Yeah.
did this all start?
Well, I mean, I'm a huge. I've been a huge sports fan for my whole life. One of my first words, according to my parents, was Larry Bird. Like literally like one of the first things I ever said, I guess. After like a couple of the staples. So yeah, I just grew up in Boston in the '80s, which was a really easy time to fall in love with sports. And my father, despite his tenor singing, was also he was a goalkeeper in college at UMass, and also I think made the freshman basketball team, but then ended up not playing much basketball. Anyway, I come from as far as white Jewish families go, a pretty athletic family, and have always loved sports, and used to win. One my father's company's college basketball office pool so often that they banned me from participating eventually. Um, and yeah, just have always just been a huge sports fan, and yeah, it has finally transitioned into DFS, I guess.
Well, were you a sports bettor before DFS?
Not that seriously. I would make bets on sports, and I bet on the Patriots, to win the Super Bowl a bunch of times. So got lucky doing that. And I've always enjoyed sports betting to a point, but also knew that unless I dedicated, my life to it or a lot of time to it, I wasn't going to be a winning sports bettor. So I was always pretty realistic about that. And
Got it, got it. Because that's what I was trying to figure out what your attraction to DFS was, whether it's just, the thrill of gambling on sports or in a new way, or if it was just the methodical way of setting lineups and finding the right combination.
yeah, I mean, DFS is just really fun. So it was one of those things that I purposefully didn't get into it for a while because I knew it would it would take up a lot of my time. Like I really did know that, and when I did get into it, it did take up a lot of my time, and it eventually impeded on my poker as far as poker studying or even poker playing. I instead of maybe learning PLO or something, I would be studying NFL lineups all weekend or something
Hmm.
like that. So yeah, so DFS is just a really fun thing to do, and that's really how I got into it first. But also, I had enough friends at the time who were telling me that they were beating it and telling me that it was soft and that there was it was kind of just like not just like, but in some ways was like party poker in 2004 where there was a lot of soft money. sports betting, you're betting against the house, and it's hard to beat the house. DFS, it's peer to peer, and you're playing against other people. With some high rake, but you're still competing against other people, and if you can get a big enough edge against other people who aren't maybe taking it as seriously or aren't as good at DFS as you, then you can make money at it. And I just felt it was like a clearer path to actually profit, and it is.
So like this December, obviously, things went well for you. You
Yeah,
won the Fantasy Football World Championship for DraftKings
I
for
did.
$2
Yeah,
million. dollars.
unbelievable.
$2
Really.
million for fantasy football.
Yeah, yes, yes. The biggest fantasy football tournament of the year, and I had qualified for it, and I really, yeah, I had qualified for it, and I just kind of ran the best and played, I guess, one of the best that day, and it was a day that I could have ended the day with $10,000 or 20 or $2 million, and just somehow it all just came together, and I'm very grateful for it because it came at a great time as far as the poker landscape changing and all that different stuff, and really really solidified a lot of things for me.
You got in for a $600 qualifier. And now obviously turning 600 into 2 million, poker scale wise, that doesn't seem like that seems amazing, but at $600, that's a high buy-in for the site, right?
Yeah, and actually, what it was I entered. I mean, the thing is, and I'm sure the poker audience can understand this. Like, it wasn't the only satellite that I ever played for this tournament.
Right. Like I think
I
that's the
worked.
biggest thing that the public feels about DFS is that, they're people who they have their favorite players and they put in a lineup and they might not even have a shot in hell against the guys who are covering every base, or at least the smart bases.
Right. Well, I don't mean it like that. I mean, it was a single entry tournament, but what I'm saying is, like, I entered a $300 2 weeks before, and a $100, so I was taking different shots, through the year at qualifying for this for the main event, and I just happened to win a $600 qualifier at one point during the season.
Got it. All right, so obviously there are no sports at the moment other than a few golf matches. Are you jonesing for sports to come back?
Uh, yeah, so I was playing a ton of NBA and doing well with that, and the last night, the NBA, the NBA is kind of what kind of transitioned us into some of these lockdowns, and really in a lot of ways changed the world because Rudy Gobert for the Utah Jazz, was diagnosed with coronavirus right before a game started, in the middle of March. And I was playing heavy DFS at that time. And actually, that night was lucky enough that I had players in 4 of the 6 games in my main lineup. And the 2 games that I didn't really have any players in were the 2 games that got canceled.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, so it was really, maybe the theme of this podcast is another
I know
form
my
of.
Heat were playing that night and they got the game in.
Yep, I had who did I had? I had
Maybe
uh,
Bam.
no, oh yeah, I had Ben. Man, I forget the other guy's name now. That's crazy.
Jimmy Butler.
Not Jay Crowder. No, it was a man. It's crazy. I don't remember his name, but it wasn't Jay Crowder. But it was the 3-4 guy, the dunker, the guy who's good at the dunk
Oh,
contest.
okay. Yeah. Derek Jones Jr.
Yeah, Derek Jones. I kept on wanting to say Damian Jones Jr., but I knew it wasn't right. But yeah, exactly. Derek Jones Jr.
DJJ.
Hmm.
Oh,
Yeah.
that worked out well for you, other than, losing uh,
Yeah.
your
So, but
income source.
exactly. But it was a great send off. I ended up winning like 100,000 that night, and almost won like.
Wow.
Yeah, it was crazy. I came in first in like a bunch of big tournaments, and then came in second in the biggest tournament, and came in second by like a half a point. So there was like a final 3-pointer at the buzzer that didn't go in, I would have won like an extra 80,000
That's
or something.
crazy because I feel like that was a random Tuesday or something. I mean, like
Yeah,
100,000 on a random Tuesday. I mean, yeah, you're
yeah.
you're crushing it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I kind of just, it's one of those nights where I just, everything went right. And, in DFS, if you're playing seriously, you're kind of entering, it was basically my process was like I would create like five different lineups, and like one of them would be my main lineup. And that lineup would go in every single tournament on the whole site. So, the $1,500 tournament all the way down to the $4 tournament. And, I was just so if you hit, if lightning strikes and that lineup goes off, then like you're winning all these different tournaments. So that's kind of what happened. Um,
Uh, are
so
you able to watch sports and enjoy it anymore, or are you just looking at individual players and muttering under your
uh,
breath?
I mean, I'm certainly able to watch sports and enjoy it. I mean, I'm still not, even though I, had a great year. I'm not necessarily a full-time DFS pro, even though, I was really enjoying it. And yeah, I would say my fandom for my specific Boston teams maybe has gone down, some percentage, maybe 10%. Maybe or probably more on a random Sunday, like, instead of just watching the Patriots and like caring so much about how the Patriots do in that exact game, I'm a little bit more worried about my DFS teams. But when it gets to the playoffs, I'm still pretty diehard and all that kind of stuff. Um, but yeah, so anyways, you asked about what I'm doing now. I kind of quickly transitioned to the stock market, which is really how I'm spending my time,
Mhm.
besides my family these days.
The original
So,
DFS.
oh yeah, I mean, as Brian, the icon, Micon, says, the biggest casino in the world, and it's not even close. It really isn't. So yeah, I've been waking up, at 4 in the morning, West Coast time, and preparing for the day of trading and trying to learn. My friend Nick has been like I have a friend Nick who's actually I met through Brian Micon, who's just like really a genius at some of this stuff and has been mentoring me a little bit, or I don't know if he would call it mentoring, but he's been helping me a ton and just been learning a lot about basically day trading and a little bit about the markets in general and how and how someone might approach doing it for a living, I guess.
It's all about table selection, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, another theme is just, kind of my career in gambling is just knowing the right people. Honestly, sometimes, and it's not by design normally. It's just, you happen to, be friends with a Benny Glazer who, not only, might win you some money, but also, might teach you a thing or two about Omaha 8 or better, or just, or Mark Gregorich, or, now my friend Nick, and just stuff like that, I've been fortunate with. And, you can learn a lot from people if you're willing to accept that they know more than you, and that's something that I'm usually pretty good at. So yeah, and so it's been fun with the markets, and certainly a great time to be in the chair, as one of my other trading friends says. Just to be just to be trading in an environment like this. Even as someone who's not necessarily that good at it, it's just there's so much opportunity out there.
Yeah, everything's pretty volatile. So,
Exactly, yeah. So that's
uh,
kind of what I'm doing.
what was your largest non-poker wager? I guess you could also say non-DFS as well.
Well, I mean, the sports betting count, or you're thinking more of a prop bet or something like that, I guess.
Yeah, bet with friends or Super Bowl, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, I pretty much since like 2010, I've bet between $5,000 and $10,000 on the Patriots, to win the Super Bowl at like anywhere from like 5 to 1 to 10 to 1 odds. So that's kind of like a somewhat big bet that I make every year. Um,
That you're profiting on, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. No, I mean they've won three. Three. Yeah, yeah. No, it's been good for sure. Um, yeah, and then I I had a local bookie basically shut me down because he thought I was some expert on season-long futures, and I was like, it's like I'm a Boston sports fan. I bet on the Patriots. I bet on the Red
Yeah.
Sox. Like, sorry that Boston teams win every single year. Like, I
Can
don't.
anybody even be an expert at futures? Isn't that one of the worst bets you can make in a casino?
It's yeah. I mean, it's supposedly in general. That guy James Holzhauer, the Jeopardy guy, I guess said
Hmm.
that he finds a lot of edges in futures. But yeah, in general, it's one of the highest big bets on the board. But I guess if you really get down the nitty gritty and you're betting the Pirates to win at 18-1 when they should be 14-1 or something like that, maybe you can find some edge. But yeah, I mean that's certainly not what I was doing. I was just picking my favorite teams to win, and they just kept winning.
Jeopardy James. I invited him on this podcast, and he said he was a little too busy at the moment. So
Yeah,
I'm gonna harass him again, ask him about those futures.
you should.
Uh,
That would be
let's
interesting.
see here. Do you have a celebrity doppelganger? Or growing up, was there anybody that people said you looked like?
I was prepared for this question.
Interesting. I didn't
Yeah,
ask it to Brandon.
I think you asked it. Yeah, you asked it to someone I was listening to. So my answer, even though I'm not proud of it, is Joey Chestnut, which my
Joey
friends,
Chestnut. I have never gotten a good close look at him. You're talking about the hot dog guy.
the hot dog guy. Yeah,
Let me
I have
Google him right now.
I have friends. One of my friend Kevin Klein. He's a comedian and a radio host. He went to Syracuse with me, and I actually just Googled him again right now, and
Oh my God.
you do see it.
Well, I think you have more teeth than he does. Or maybe this is
Yeah,
just a bad
whatever it is.
picture.
But I mean, my friends have found some. It's hard to find a picture. It's not always going to be perfect, but my friends have found some amazing pictures of us side by side that are kind of unflattering, but
I would
certainly.
need a picture of you with your hand over your mouth, looking like you're about to puke,
Yeah.
all the veins in your forehead popping out. Man, this guy, these are not flattering photos.
I can I'll email you one that my friend put on his Instagram. Good.
Joey Chestnut. That's great. All right. What is the most entertaining thing you've watched, read, or listened to since self-isolation?
Okay. So I really haven't got. Actually, it's funny. You asked me before the podcast what I might not want to talk about, and I basically said politics. But so this isn't totally politics, but I started to read this book called "The Case for the Nation" by an author, Jill Lepore. It's actually called "This America: The Case for the Nation." And I guess the most interesting thing I've got from it, and I'll try to make it short and sweet, especially because I haven't even finished the book or even close to it.
What if you get to the end and it's like it was all a dream?
Right. Well, my friend kind of gave me a little synopsis going into it too, and it's just that. Yeah, this actually is very politics, just that the Republican Party has, and this it's not going to be negative towards either party, but yeah, the Republican Party has kind of taken nationalism and just like pride for America as kind of like their marketing slant, while and successfully done this. Well, like if you picture someone with the American flag in their front yard, like in general, you're probably going to think that they're Republican. And that's kind of a weird thing that's happened with
Interesting.
it. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing that's happened with our country where the Democrats have I don't even think they meant to do it, but somehow the marketing of their party has moved away from nationalism and moved away from being American is important, and being an American is not something to be ashamed of. And clearly racism or not liking someone because they're not American is
Yeah, xenophobia.
not good. Being proud of being American is not the same as disliking someone who isn't American or not respecting someone. So just kind of an interesting concept that I've never really, seen put, never really thought about before. But yeah, so and just in general, just been thinking a lot about partisan politics and how our country is a little so divided, based on politics right now, which is really frustrating to me.
Jill Lepore,
Yeah,
let's see here, professor of American history at Harvard University and staff writer at the New Yorker. Check it out.
yeah. She also has a book called This America, which is like 2000. Oh, no, never mind. She has another. What's the? I don't remember what the other book's called, but she has
The Name of War, The Whites in Their Eyes, Blind Spot, New York Burning.
None of those so far.
She's
These truths. Yeah, it's called These Truths, like guys in These Truths. A history of the United States. Yeah, it's like a 2,000-page book, but it's pretty popular or pretty well known.
Well, some people they read history books, and some people read political books, and some people watch Tiger King. So
yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I really have not done much reading during this quarantine at all. I've really just stared at my Twitter account and tried to figure out what stocks to buy. But in that, realizing that I needed to expand a little bit, I have tried to seek out a little bit of reading and maybe learning a little bit more about the world that we live in, especially at this time.
Do you like telling people that you are a professional poker player?
Not really, no.
Do you lie to cab drivers and Uber drivers?
I have before. Yeah, I guess I have before. I guess now I would probably tell them that I I'm a stock trader, even though I'm certainly would not consider myself a professional stock trader. But I just feel like if I didn't want to go into everything, then that's probably what I would do.
Yeah, you're not going to get much follow up there unless the person's is really into it, and then they're just asking you for tips, which could be also a trouble.
Yeah, that's true, and I've never tried that before, so I could see that being trouble also. But usually people like to talk about themselves if they can, so I guess I'd almost rather hear them talk about their stock tips than hear them talk about the last time they played 2-4 limit hold'em type thing.
Right. Do you have a nemesis or someone you can't beat in poker? Someone who's always held over you?
No, I guess no one comes to mind. I guess one thing that comes to mind is that John Hennigan always claims that I'm his nemesis when I play with him, but he also, as we talked about earlier, came first in the So I every once in a while I remind him.
Pretty sure the prize difference between yours and his was pretty massive.
Exactly.
It would make up for any difference at the cash table.
It would make up for any 300, 600 triple draw hand that we might play against each other. But I kind of just sometimes, usually I just let him run with it because he's pretty funny in general, and it's hard to argue with him sometimes.
Headphones on at the table? Yes or no?
No, I mean certainly not during cash games, unless I'm, the only times that you'll see me wearing a headphone in a cash game is if I'm almost for sure going to be losing and boiling inside and tilted and just kind of need to relax somehow, or if I guess I only have the iPhone headphones at the table usually, so noise. I don't really bring noise canceling headphones. Although if I'm ever playing with Mike Matusow, who I like and I'm friendly with, I would love if someone would let me borrow their noise canceling headphones, because especially during a World Series of Poker tournament, he and I tell him this to his face, so I don't mind saying it here. It's just so worried about his own life and his own what's going on with himself in the moment that it does frustrate me. I just don't, I'm trying to focus on myself. I don't.
It is incredible how often he comes up in this question.
Yeah.
I never prompt it. I don't tell people beforehand, hey, this is a good spot to dig at Mike Matusow. It just comes up every time. It's insane.
Yeah.
It's I don't wear headphones unless I'm at Matusow's table.
Yeah. And when you asked the question, I didn't even think about it. But then as I kept on thinking, I was like, yeah, that would be the answer, Matusow.
All right. So you're not listening to anything at the tables, but if you were, it'd be Fish or the Grateful Dead, I'm assuming.
Yeah,
Talking your bands.
Talking Heads is actually, if I'm ever if I ever have anxiety or like if I'm ever like in a bad headspace at poker
Mhm.
table, I would say Talking Heads first, and then Grateful Dead second would be what usually kind of brings me back to where I want to be.
That's cool. I love I'm not a big Talking Heads fan, but I think I've seen Stop Making Sense like 30 times.
Yeah, amazing,
One
really,
of the
really
best
amazing.
concert movies ever. So how many times have you seen Fish live?
I think
Or is it Grateful Dead the one that you go to? Are you a
uh,
Deadhead or a Fish head?
so I would say as far as what I listen to at home, and maybe what I like more, maybe the Grateful Dead by nose, but I grew up in the '90s and early 2000s when
Hmm.
Jerry Garcia passed away in 1995, so I never got to see him live once. I was 15 when he died, and saw my first Fish concert later that year, and then I guess I went to 175 since.
Ooh, 175 concerts.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of those were, certain years where I just went to, back to back to back to back.
Right, right. You followed them on their tours and stuff. Okay.
For sure, yeah. I mean, these days it's more like 2 to 5 a year, something like that. I'm certainly much less obsessed than I used to be. But when I was going to see them all the time, they were a great band to go see, night after night after night. I still love them, but I don't necessarily feel the need to see them as much now because they're a little past whatever the magical peak was, I would say.
That's funny. My boss, Jeff Schulman, is obviously a huge Fish head, and he was just telling me last week about they're releasing these old live shows.
Yeah.
Uh, I can't remember what it was called, but it was some show from '97 that I got a link to,
Yep.
and I got
Sure.
through about 40 minutes,
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty good for me.
that is pretty
I
good.
I like jam bands, but I've never been able to get into these guys.
Interesting. Well, I'm surprised. I'm surprised if you like jam bands that you're not able.
Okay, I shouldn't say I like jam bands. I
Yeah.
like bands who jam in
Okay.
live shows. I like improvisation. I like different takes on what I heard on the radio,
Right.
but maybe not the 13-minute
Sure.
meandering.
Okay. That makes more sense.
Um, do you have any favorite venues? I mean, you've been all over the country.
Yeah. My favorite venues would be probably the Gorge in Washington,
Hmm.
um, Red Rocks in Colorado, and
Man,
then
I gotta see a show at Red Rocks.
Red Rocks is amazing. Yeah. Both of those are outdoor venues, and then also Deer Creek in Indiana, Noblesville, Indiana. That's probably like a little bit of a sleeper on the list, but it's just like kind of out in like this cornfield in Indiana, and there's camping, and it's really pretty magical place. And then as far as indoor venues, Madison Square Garden is an amazing place to see a concert. And then one place that I've only been one time, but I would love to go back someday is I don't know the name of the stadium, but it's a University of Tennessee, where the team plays basketball. I saw Fish there once, and
Mm.
I just really they whoever donated the money to build that, it really went all out because they have a state of the art stadium there. So it was pretty cool place.
Awesome. All right, few more to wrap it up. Are you superstitious at all?
Yeah, I would say yes. I don't not too bad, but yeah, I would say I have some superstitions. I'm not exactly sure what they. If you're gonna do that follow-up question, maybe sometimes I don't want to talk about something that's going well but not completed yet. Kind of just want to,
Oh,
don't
okay.
want to,
Like
but
talking to a picture in the middle of a no-hitter.
exactly. I certainly would never do that.
If your
That
stack's big, you're not gonna go around in the bathroom breaks telling everybody how many chips you got.
Correct. Yeah. And if I was pitching a no hitter and the announcer on TV started blabbing about it, I wouldn't be too happy about that either.
Yeah, yeah. Anybody comes up to Jesse, you want to tilt him, just just compliment him on his stack.
Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Wow, you're
Um,
really crushing today, huh? Yeah, I don't like that. But I am also very, I understand that it's unreasonable and it doesn't bother me that much. But yeah, yeah, I guess I mean, even if I'm in a cash game, like say I'm just having a great day in a cash game, and then Kenny Tran or someone from the other day is like, wow, Jesse's crushing all you guys today or something like that'll. Yeah,
yes.
I'll just think in my head, oh, okay, well I guess that's over.
Do you have a favorite movie?
Reservoir Dogs comes to mind. I haven't really analyzed. I'm not a huge movie buff. I mean, I like movies like the next guy, but I haven't totally analyzed it. But yeah, I love the movie Reservoir Dogs, Quentin Tarantino movie.
Mr. Pink.
Yeah.
What about favorite gambling movie?
Favorite gambling movie? Man, I don't have a great answer. I guess Casino, but is that even a gambling? I guess it is.
There's gambling in it.
Yeah.
It's in the gambling world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great movie.
All right. Do you have a bold prediction for poker's future?
You hear me still? Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, did you hear me?
Yeah, I know I can hear you. I had something just happened for a second. But bold prediction for poker's future, man. I am not very optimistic on poker's future right now, to be honest with you. And I'm very grateful for this kind of DFS win and my 3-year-old son and like a new kind of transition in my life, because if I was this pessimistic about poker 10 years ago, I don't know what I would what I would do. Because I'm poker's not going to go away, in any of that stuff. But just online poker is in a lot of trouble, and just the privatization of cash games. While I understand why it's happening, I don't think is good for poker overall. It's good for some people, which is fine, but it's not good for the whole of poker. And also the fact that people are getting so good at poker isn't great for the whole of poker either. Although to me, I'm one of those people who a lot of people say it's boring to watch the great players. They play kind of a uninteresting or maybe not as exciting style as like maybe Semi Farha used to play on high stakes poker. But to me,
characters.
Right. To me, I love watching the high level players. I mean, that's the only poker that I enjoy watching is, watching David Peters and Stephen Chidwick, execute their advanced strategy. Like that's really interesting to me, but I just don't think that that's going to be interesting to, the common folk or, the people that we want to, attract to poker as much, and I don't think that's the fault of anyone. It just makes me a little bit more pessimistic about the future of poker. So sorry about that answer. I know.
No, I share your concerns.
Yeah.
Especially with live poker, especially. I mean, online poker has regulation issues, not popularity issues.
Right.
So
yeah, what's happening with at least high stakes live poker these days is a bummer. I get why it's happening, but and I myself played and even been part of, getting private cash games together in the past, although it's probably not really something I'm going to be doing much of in the future. But it's just a bummer. It's just too bad that you can't just show up to the poker room anymore and put your name on the list and play in a high stakes cash game. It just doesn't work like that anymore. And that was a great time when you could do that, because it attracted people to come and it was just a cool environment. But it's not how it is anymore. So that's, I'm grateful that it was like that for so long, honestly.
well, the one thing I do take comfort in is that I was saying all the same things after Black Friday as well, and here we are a decade later.
No,
So
it's cool how, I mean, poker really has done pretty well after Black Friday. And I mean, I think things like the World Series of Poker aren't going away, and so I think that, yeah, I think tournament poker is fine. I mean, not that that's like too yeah, that's a pretty common opinion, and I think it's right. Tournament poker is more or less fine, and can still be interesting, and people competing in the World Series of Poker is still going to be a thing. Then obviously we have the problem of of viruses and health, which I think is really terrible for poker too. But I guess we just have to be optimistic that in 2 years, that really won't be a big deal, or however long that is.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is, I think Isaac Haxton wrote a great blog. If anyone hasn't read it, on what the new poker future will look like, and what we can do to make poker maybe a more sanitary game, or a healthier environment for everyone involved. And I think he did a great job laying that out. And I think it's gonna be something that clearly needs to be done.
Yeah, check that out, guys. All right, we end the podcast the same way every time, with a question from the random question generator. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
Here we go. All right, which do you like better, Star Wars or Star Trek?
I am not a fan of either. I respect them, but I'm not a fan of either. But yeah, I guess my answer is Star Wars. Just good.
That's funny. Okay, so you're on neither team.
Neither team.
All right, let's change it up here.
Okay.
This is better. Which do you like better, ninjas or pirates?
Pirates, I guess. Yeah, I guess again, neither in my wheelhouse, but I'll go pirates.
Oh man, these questions. They always give me like the one words. Okay, this one's got to produce something. What is the strangest thing you've eaten?
Strangest thing I've eaten. I do not have a great answer here. All I can think about is
nothing adventurous.
I'm a pretty adventurous eater in general, but I guess I don't know. Yeah, for some reason, none of it's like coming off as like super strange. I guess when you ask that question, I think of the show Survivor, which I love, and just how they used to have all those like crazy eating challenges, where they would eat like cow brain, or even worse, eat live like huge insects and stuff like that. But I always think that I probably wouldn't be very good at that challenge. But and always surprised how all these guys just kind of do it. But yeah, for me, nothing comes to mind. Literally, really doesn't come to mind.
I would have said the poker kitchen at the Rio, but.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge All-American Dave guy. I've been an All-American Dave supporter from day one. I think I don't really care what his prices are. I think he does like a huge service to the poker community, and I don't even think I would enjoy the World Series of Poker without him there. So yeah, that's my poker kitchen hot take.
Well, hopefully we see you and Dave sooner than later.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. Jesse, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing the stories.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
That's it. That is the show. Thank you, Jesse, once again for the time. Everyone out there, please go follow Jesse on Twitter at MazeOrBowie. And while you're there, you can also follow us on Twitter at CardPlayerMedia or at Poker_Stories. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already done so, and if you could please do us a favor and leave a nice rating and a review of the show on your podcast app, that would really help us out. Say some nice words, give us 5 stars, and then let us know about it with an email to pokerstories@cardplayer.com, and we'll give you a free digital subscription to Card Player magazine. Thanks for listening.